Our first case tonight begins with a sacred landmark, a hidden fishing spot passed down like a family heirloom, fiercely guarded by those who know its location. But when one man betrays this trust for clout, he sets into motion a series of events that will cement his downfall in local legend. What follows is a tale of territorial warfare, small-town justice, and a most unexpected ally, a figure whose presence is spoken of in whispers around campfires and convenience stores alike.
The trail to my fishing hole was so well hidden it could have been a portal to Narnia, if Narnia smelled like pond water and mosquito spray. You wouldn't notice it driving by. It looked like a solid wall of pine and honeysuckle, but if you knew where to step, you'd find a narrow slit in the brush just wide enough to slip through sideways. I carved that path myself with a machete I bought at a yard sale, one branch at a time, until it was nothing more than a shadow in the trees. The smell shifted the moment you ducked inside. Out on the gravel road, it was all gasoline, fryer grease from the gas station deli, and cigarette smoke. In here, the air turned damp and cool, heavy with pine sap and lake mist. Every footstep crunched softly on pine needles. A woodpecker hammered somewhere overhead like nature's construction crew, and cicadas droned on in a sound that felt both soothing and mildly threatening. My daddy brought me here first back when I was barely tall enough to see over his tackle box. I remember him crouching beside me, pointing out over the glimmering water. "This here's a honey hole," he whispered, like he was letting me in on a government secret. "You don't tell nobody about it, you hear? Some things are too special to share." And he meant it. Over the years, I learned everything on that bank. How to tie knots, how to cast under low branches, how to read the ripples for bass. Daddy would sit in his old folding chair, a cigarette dangling from his mouth, and tell me fish stories so exaggerated they belonged in comic books. That man could turn catching a 3-pound crappie into a saga fit for HBO. Now he's gone, but every time I walk down that path, I swear I feel him there, his calloused hand on my shoulder, whispering about patience and bait choices. That spot wasn't just a place to fish, it was a sanctuary. Life in town is loud. Gossip rings out like church bells, sirens echo through the hills, and every trip to the quick stop ends with somebody telling you who's getting divorced. But here was quiet. Dragonflies hovered like little helicopters over glassy water, frogs croaked like they were laughing at their own jokes, and the world felt simple again. Most mornings, I'd take my boy with me, thermos in one hand, tackle box in the other. He'd sit on the bank asking questions like, "Do turtles have dreams?" and "What happens if I fall in?" And we'd laugh until our bellies hurt, eating peanut butter crackers while the sun came up. That place wasn't just my happy place, it was ours, and I guarded it like gold. Only I was about to learn something about gold. Sooner or later, someone always wants to steal it.
Observe the female's ritualistic preparation, a secret trail meticulously carved into the wilderness, a fishing hole guarded like a family heirloom. In a habitat where resources are scarce, knowledge itself is a form of currency. And in this moment, she is rich beyond measure.
Travis showed up in our trailer park like a discount tornado, loud, dusty, and leaving a mess everywhere he went. Lot number 6 had been abandoned for months, the kind of place possums held board meetings in. Then one sticky summer afternoon, here comes Travis, roaring in with a Dodge Dakota that sounded like a chainsaw choking on gravel. His muffler backfired so loud it made Mrs. Bailey's Pomeranian faint. He hopped out shirtless, wearing jeans that'd been through at least 2 wars, and a camo ball cap stained darker than motor oil. He strutted around like he owned the place, nodding at neighbors who'd come out onto their porches to see what all the racket was. "Howdy, neighbors," he said with a grin that probably worked better back when he still had all his teeth. By nightfall, folks had already formed committees to discuss him. Miss Patty from Bible study called him rough around the edges but polite. Jimbo, who collects lawn ornaments that scare actual birds away, swore Travis had the look of a man who'd sell you a stolen lawnmower and borrow your gas to use it. I didn't care. Men like Travis are common as dandelions. They blow through town with a smile and a sob story, then vanish once their truck gives out. But Travis noticed me. He noticed me dragging myself home from diner shifts, smelling like fried chicken grease and cheap coffee. He noticed me slipping out in dawn every Saturday with my boy, a thermos, and a tackle box. "Y'all always disappear early," he said one morning, leaning against his truck like a country music album cover gone wrong. "You catching something good or just enjoying the view?" I shrugged him off. He grinned like he'd solved a puzzle. "Ain't nobody gets up that early lest they got a honey hole." I ignored him, but he had persistence. Jumped my dread car battery one day, fixed my mower the next. "You're handy," I said, and he smirked. "Darling, I've been handier than duct tape since I was 5. He told stories that could have filled a library. Jobs he'd had, fights he'd won, and fish he'd allegedly caught that nearly sunk a boat. I'd bet a paycheck half of it was nonsense, but I was tired, lonely, and stupidly impressed by his ability to make changing spark plugs sound heroic. "Show me your spot," he said one evening, perched on his tailgate, sunset behind him. "I won't tell a soul, swear I'm a mama's grave." He looked so earnest I almost believed him. But I should have known better. Men like Travis don't keep secrets. They collect 'em, polish 'em, and brag about 'em till the whole county knows. 2 weeks later, I was easing down that secret trail, my boy trailing behind me with a juice box in one pocket and a fishing pole twice his size over his shoulder. The morning fog clung to us like dryer lint, and I was already picturing us sitting on the bank, quiet and peaceful, just like Daddy taught me. But halfway down, I heard it, the chug-chug of a boat motor. Not the soft hum of an electric trolling motor, but a loud, clunky, I ain't paid for a tune-up since '09 kind of noise. I froze. My boy bumped into me. "Mama, why'd you stop?" I whispered, crouching low like a cartoon spy. I crept forward, brushing branches aside until I reached the clearing. There they were, 2 men in a John boat, laughing like they'd been day drinking since sunrise, Bud Light cans floating around their feet. One had a bass on the line, jerking and splashing right where my daddy used to teach me knots. And there, on the bank, sat Travis. Not just sitting, holding court. He had a cooler full of fish beside him, a lawn chair leaned back at an angle that screamed arrogance, and that smug grin plastered across his face like he'd just discovered fire. I ducked behind a tree and yanked out my phone. That's when I saw it. Travis was live streaming on Facebook. "Best honey hole in Polk County. Y'all come on down, catch dinner." I stared at the screen, horrified, as comments flew in. "Where's this at? Looks like she's holding out on us. Be there in 10. By that evening, the dirt road looked like the county fair parking lot. Trucks lined up bumper to bumper, and teenagers hauled coolers and Bluetooth speakers down my once-hidden trail. By sunset, my peaceful sanctuary looked like a tailgating party. Wrappers and cigarette butts littered the bank, and some genius carved initials into the big oak tree I used to lean against. The next morning was worse. My trot lines, the ones I'd tied late at night, carefully tucked under branches, had been cut clean, gone, vanished. Somebody even spray-painted "Legend" on a tree stump. When I stormed up to Travis's truck, he leaned back in his seat, flicking ashes out the window like some villain in a made-for-TV movie. "What? You think you own nature? Don't be selfish. Folks got a right to fish." I wanted to slap the smirk off his face, but I turned and walked away, nails digging into my palm so hard I left crescent marks. That lake wasn't just a fishing spot anymore. It was a crime scene. And Travis had just made himself public enemy number 1.
Observe the transformation. A sanctuary defiled, a queen stripped of her territory. Note the invader's posture, leaning back, smug, confident in his dominance. Such displays are common in species that mistake arrogance for immunity.
Life in the trailer park went from quiet to chaotic overnight. Trucks rumbled down the gravel road at all hours, their headlights sweeping through my curtains like searchlights. Boat motors echoed across the lake late into the night, mixing with the sound of Bluetooth speakers blasting country rap and teenagers screaming over beer pong games. The narrow path I'd carved with a machete years ago stomped flat, branches snapped, honeysuckle vines torn down like tinsel after Christmas. Someone left a styrofoam bait cup right in the middle of my favorite casting spot, as if to mark their territory. And the gossip, oh, the gossip. At the quick stop, the red-haired cashier gave me a smug grin. "That your honey hole Travis found? Man's a legend now." He rang up my iced coffee slow, like he wanted to twist the knife. At church, Miss Patty leaned across the pew mid-sermon to whisper, "Bless your heart, honey, heard your little spot's famous now." Her voice dripped with pity, and pity in this town spreads faster than head lice in a preschool. My boy felt it too. One evening, as we sat on the porch listening to some drunk stranger's boat backfire across the lake, he tugged my sleeve. "Mama, can we fish somewhere else? I don't like it there no more. It's too loud." That broke something in me. Fishing wasn't just a hobby. It was our safe place, a quiet bubble where we could escape bills, diner shifts, and the judgment of neighbors who thought they knew everything. Now, even that was gone. Meanwhile, Travis strutted around like a conquering hero. He'd rev his Dodge Dakota's muffler every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, rattling windows like an alarm clock from hell. Folks greeted him at the quick stop like a celebrity. He'd wave, lean on his truck bed, and smirk when I walked by, daring me to say something. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I stayed quiet, but inside, I was planning. I wasn't just mad. Mad burns hot and quick, like a grease fire. No, this was colder, sharper. And I swore to myself right there on that porch as the sun went down over my ruined sanctuary, I'm taking it back. Every small town's got its legends. Some have ghost stories, others have cryptids. Polk County, we've got Three-Wheel Bill. You'll hear him before you see him. A banshee wail of a three-wheeler tearing down Main Street like a weed-eater possessed by Satan himself. Dogs chase him, kids wave, and adults just shake their heads like they've seen this movie before. Folks swear he hasn't touched the ground with both feet since 1998. Bill's the kind of man who looks like he was carved out of an oak stump and pickled in sweet tea. He's got a beard that could hide small wildlife, a denim vest covered in fishing lures he calls formal wear, and a cigarette glued to his lips so well I'm not convinced he even takes it out to eat. He's also omniscient. Nobody knows how, but he always seems to know who's cheating, who's getting arrested, and who's selling an ATV out the back of a barn. Some folks whisper he's part swamp witch, part Facebook group admin. When word spread about Travis discovering my honey hole, I knew exactly who to see. I found Bill outside the bait shop, leaned back on his three-wheeler like a king on his throne. He was sipping yoo-hoo out of a mason jar with his name on it in Sharpie. "Bill," I said, hands on hips, "I got a problem." Without even looking at me, he exhaled a puff of smoke. "Travis," he said. I blinked. "How'd you—" "Girl," he interrupted, finally turning to look at me with those squinty eyes, "I know everything." He flicked ash into a Mountain Dew can. "He's been bragging all week. Even showed somebody your trail. Thinks he's Polk County's Bass King." He leaned in, eyes glinting like a man about to commit a misdemeanor. "Now, you want your spot back or not?" I nodded. He stubbed his cigarette out on the sole of his boot and stood. "Get on. We're fixing this." Minutes later, I was clinging to the back of that three-wheeler like a terrified cat as Bill whipped around potholes at Mach 3. He pulled up behind his trailer, and I swear his shed looked like Bass Pro Shops had exploded and raccoons had repossessed it. Rusty tools hung from nails, mystery buckets lined the walls, half-labeled things like possum tonic and not paint. Bill grabbed a bucket, grinning like a cartoon villain. First, we ruin his boat. Then, we ruin his reputation. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. And possibly whiplash.
Behold the arrival of an apex predator, a battle-hardened male with unmatched local knowledge and an unholy attachment to yoo-hoo. Legends say he knows every secret within a 50-mile radius, and now he has chosen to intervene.
Bill's shed smelled like motor oil, swamp funk, and bad decisions. He slid a bucket across the floor with his boot. Inside, expired chicken livers, shrimp shells, garlic powder, and possibly some kind of rodent jerky. He stirred it with a paint stick like he was summoning demons. "This here's O.D. regret," Bill muttered, sprinkling glitter on top until the mix looked like a swampy unicorn crime scene. "If it don't make buzzards cry, I ain't Bill." We waited until Travis left for his shift at the feed store, then rolled in like a NASCAR pit crew. Bill popped the boat cover with a screwdriver and lifted a cushion. "See this foam? It's basically a sponge for despair." He slathered the stink under every seat. We tucked stink-soaked cotton balls inside rod holders, duct-taped stink bombs under the trolling motor, and misted the carpet with ammonia for depth. "Science, baby," Bill said, adjusting his vest. "Phase 2, reclaiming the lake." Bill called in reinforcements, 3 local kids who ran TikTok like a news channel. They arrived armed with glow sticks, fishing line, and too much energy. We worked in silence, like a covert military unit if military units used dollar store craft supplies. The boys strung clear line between trees across the trail, just high enough to smack a forehead. The girl tied glow sticks to branches, making the shoreline look like an alien rave. Bill built his masterpiece, a scarecrow in a bedsheet anchored in the shallows, holding an old lantern that flickered like a warning from beyond the grave. "Sound sells it," Bill whispered. He planted a Bluetooth speaker in a hollow log, queued up a loop of coyote howls, wind chimes, and train whistles. The effect, instant Appalachian horror film. Halfway through, headlights swept across the yard. Travis's Dakota coughed into the driveway, muffler rattling like an angry hornet's nest. Bill didn't flinch. He picked up a random socket wrench and chucked it at the tailgate. Clang! Travis jumped out, cussing. Dang muffler bracket's loose again. He slid under the truck with a flashlight, swearing at imaginary problems. Go, Bill mouthed. We melted into the brush like ghosts, glow sticks swaying behind us. Bill fired up the three-wheeler, cigarette ember glowing in the dark. Tomorrow, he said, voice calm as pond water, we turn that lake into a legend. By sunrise, the lake was trending like a true crime documentary. Someone had filmed the ghost preacher scarecrow glowing in the mist, posted it to Facebook with the caption, Demon of Polk County Lake. Within hours, every aunt, uncle, and cousin in 3 counties had shared it. Folks zoomed in, claiming to see faces in the lantern glow or swearing that the sound of coyotes in the background was a woman crying. The once bustling trail went quiet overnight. Fishermen avoided it like a cursed gas station bathroom. Teens dared each other to go near it and chickened out at the first sound of a twig snapping. Even the raccoons seemed jumpy. Meanwhile, Travis's boat had evolved into a biohazard. He'd scrubbed it with bleach, vinegar, and enough pine saw to fumigate a warehouse, but the stench clung to it like a bad reputation. By day 3, the smell was so potent people crossed the street to avoid him. Someone duct-taped a sign to the boat cover that said, "Free, may be haunted." Still, Travis strutted around, revving that Dakota's muffler like it was a battle cry, bragging about his fishing legacy. He didn't realize his public execution was scheduled for that weekend at the church fish fry. The fish fry was Polk County's version of the Oscars. Long folding tables held potato salad in Cool Whip tubs, pies covered with dish towels, and enough fried catfish to feed an army. Travis showed up in his good camo, chest puffed out, already half drunk, holding court by the sweet tea jug. Then the projector flickered on. Instead of hymn lyrics, a video rolled. Dramatic gospel music swelled as slow-motion footage of Travis cutting trot lines played across the fellowship hall wall. Each scene was captioned like a wildlife documentary. The invasive species marks its territory, followed by him spray painting a stump, and defaces local landmarks in an attempt to establish dominance. The room went silent, then erupted in laughter so loud it rattled the dessert table. Miss Patty gasped so hard she dropped her deviled eggs. Kids cheered. Someone yelled, "Get him!" Travis turned the color of a boiled crawfish. He stormed toward the sound booth, but it was too late. Phones were already out, recording, posting, memeing. By sunset, his truck roared out of the trailer park for the last time, boat in tow, smell and all. Nobody's seen him since. The next morning, I returned to my honey hole. The trail was overgrown again, nature reclaiming it like it had never been disturbed. The scarecrow was gone, but its legend wasn't. People whispered about the lake spirit now. Bill just smirked and puffed smoke rings when asked. My boy sat beside me, grinning as we cast our lines. "Mama," he said, whispering, "it's like magic." I smiled. "Yeah, baby, that's exactly what it is."
And so ends the saga of the honey hole heist. A cautionary tale of one man's arrogance, one woman's grit, and a smell so catastrophic it cleared a zip code. Here, in this wild corner of small-town America, reputation isn't earned with money or titles, but with stories. Whispered at bait shops, passed around campfires, and shared online for generations to laugh at. What begins as a fishing trip can turn into folklore. A petty squabble becomes a legend. And vengeance? Well, Around here, vengeance is always home-brewed, locally sourced, and served with a side of hush puppies. Join us again as we continue documenting this curious ecosystem, where drama grows faster than the weeds, and justice always tastes better, deep-fried. Our next case begins with Darlene McCaffrey, a woman known for having the most meticulously maintained lawn in Polk County, and a folding chair she treats like a family heirloom. But when an unexpected challenger moves in, she'll face the ultimate neighborhood betrayal and call upon a local legend to restore balance to her kingdom. This is the Lawn Chair Ambush.
The trailer park was waking up slow, like a bear shaking off winter. The smell of burnt coffee drifted from a neighbor's porch. A rooster crowed 3 trailers down, illegally, according to Miss Patty, and somebody's dog barked at a squirrel like it owed him money. In this ecosystem, morning is never quiet. It's just less loud. Darlene McCaffrey sipped her sweet tea on the front steps, surveying her kingdom. A double lied with faded siding, 2 plastic flamingos, and the most perfectly manicured patch of grass in Polk County. It wasn't much, but it was hers. That yard was her sanctuary. Darlene's pride and joy sat right in the middle of it all. The throne, a lime green folding lawn chair so weathered the paint had chipped into a pattern she called trailer park camo. She'd inherited it from her daddy, who swore it was ergonomic before ergonomic was a word. Darlene guarded that chair like other folks guard family heirlooms. Round here, yard quality is a status symbol. Her grass wasn't just mowed, it was strategically engineered. She'd spent years leveling out dips, raking rocks, and coaxing stubborn patches of crabgrass into submission. Neighbors joked she was the HOA president of a park without an HOA, but Darlene didn't care. Her yard was her safe space in a world full of gossip and mufflers held together with duct tape. That morning, she adjusted her sunglasses and watched the wildlife of the park emerge. Miss Patty shuffled by with her Bible and a nose for drama. Jimbo was already shirtless, watering his driveway for reasons unknown. A couple of teens pedaled past on bikes held together with more rust and metal, their handlebars squeaking like dying mice. "Morning, Darlene," Jimbo hollered. "Morning, Jimbo," she said, lifting her tea. She leaned back in her throne, inhaling the smell of freshly cut grass and citronella candles. For a moment, everything felt perfect. But perfection doesn't last long in Polk County. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine revved, loud, sputtering, obnoxious. Darlene stiffened. That sound meant trouble. It was Wayne Chainsaw Clancy, the park's self-appointed bad boy. He'd earned the nickname after taking apart an entire riding mower with nothing but a butter knife and stubbornity. Chainsaw wasn't evil. He was just the kind of man who turned up like a raccoon in your trash when you least wanted him. Little did she know, Chainsaw was about to make her yard and her throne the stage for the most ridiculous territorial dispute in Polk County history.
In this habitat, every patch of grass is more than just turf. It is territory. Observe the female, alert, protective of her prized lawn chair, unaware that a challenger approaches. Soon, this quiet morning will erupt into a battle for dominance and dignity.
You could hear Wayne coming before you saw him. His beat-up Chevy rattled down the park road like it was held together by faith and duct tape, muffler screaming like a banshee that had stubbed its toe. Dogs barked, curtains twitched, babies cried. Chainsaw liked to say his truck had personality. Everyone else called it a sonic weapon. That morning, Darlene watched from her porch as Chainsaw roared past, blaring a country rap remix loud enough to knock over a mailbox. He parked half on the gravel, half on somebody's lawn. This time, herd on. The tires dug trenches deep enough to hold rainwater. She blinked. He didn't. Oh, he did. Chainsaw hopped out shirtless, wearing pajama pants and boots, sipping something from a styrofoam cup that didn't look like coffee. He gave Darlene a lazy two-finger wave before opening his tailgate and sitting down like he was home. Darlene's jaw tightened. Chainsaw was known for making himself at home wherever he pleased. He'd borrowed 3 lawn chairs in the last month alone, and once cooked hot dogs on a charcoal grill in Miss Patty's driveway while she was at church. The man treated the trailer park like it was his personal campground. This, however, was a new low. Darlene stormed across the yard. "Wayne Clancy, what do you think you're doing?" He grinned like a possum in a henhouse. "Relax, Darlene, it's just a yard. Thought I'd enjoy this beautiful grass you're always bragging about." "Move your truck off my lawn," she snapped. "Oh, it'll be fine," he said, patting one of the deep tire ruts like it was a pet. "Adds character." The audacity was overwhelming. Over the next week, Chainsaw's little parking habit turned into a full-blown takeover. He started bringing his recliner out of his trailer and plopping it in her yard, then a cooler, then a folding table. Neighbors stopped by to chat with him while he sat there like some redneck king. The final straw came on a Saturday morning when Darlene stepped outside and saw Chainsaw in her throne. There he was, lounging in her lime green folding chair, shirtless, beer in hand, blasting music and hollering, "Morning, neighbor," like nothing was wrong. Darlene's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just disrespect. This was war.
Observe the challenger as he establishes dominance over new territory. Note the confidence in his posture, an apex nuisance marking his claim with tire tracks, furniture, and an unwavering lack of shame. To him, this is simply a lawn. To her, it is sacred ground.
Saturday morning started with bass thumping through Darlene's trailer walls. Not the fish, but Chainsaw's ancient speakers, rattling so hard they made her ceramic rooster collection vibrate. She threw open her blinds to find him sprawled out in her throne, beer in one hand, phone in the other, grinning like a raccoon that just found an open dumpster. "Morning, Darlene," he hollered. "Love this chair. Real good lumbar support." Her blood boiled. The throne wasn't just a lawn chair. It was a legacy. Her daddy had grilled burgers from that chair, supervised yard projects from that chair, and once used it as a stepladder to change a porch light. Now Chainsaw Clancy was desecrating it with his bare, muddy feet. Before she could storm outside, her phone buzzed. Notifications flooded in. She opened Facebook. Chainsaw had gone live. "Out here chilling in my new yard, y'all," he crowed into the camera, waving a beer at my azaleas. "Man, this grass is nice," he said, stomping a boot heel into my prized lawn. "I should start charging admission." Comments poured in. "LLL, that's Darlene's yard. She gonna kill you, Wayne. That chair looks comfy as F. Free yard party at Darlene's." By noon, her yard had become a festival ground. Chainsaw's buddies dragged over lawn chairs. Jimbo brought his garden gnome collection, arranging them in a semicircle facing her trailer for ambiance. Teenagers set up cornhole. Miss Patty arrived with a casserole for the gathering. Her sanctuary was gone. Her jaw clenched as Chainsaw tipped his hat, grinning like he just stole the Hope Diamond. Some women would have called the cops. Others would have thrown a punch. Darlene knew better. In Polk County,
Justice wasn't served by law enforcement. It was served with creativity.
Watch as the invader cements his dominance, rallying his pack and broadcasting his conquest to the entire region. For the dethroned female, this is not merely embarrassment, it is an act of war, demanding a response as calculated as it is devastating.
By Monday morning, the park had turned into a spectator sport. Darlene couldn't even step outside to water her flowers without somebody slowing down to rubberneck. The trail of humiliation started at the quick stop. The cashier, a red-headed teenager with braces and a superiority complex, smirked as he rang up my sweet tea. "Hey, Miss Darlene, how's that lawn of yours holding up? Chainsaw said he's got VIP seating now." He chuckled like it was the funniest thing he'd ever said. At church, Miss Patsy ambushed her in the fellowship hall. "Bless your heart, honey," she whispered loud enough for half the congregation to hear. "We've all seen the Facebook video. You're just being so brave through all this." Pity in this town was like poison ivy. It spread fast and it always made you itch. By Tuesday, the neighborhood kids had started cutting through her yard like it was a public park. Somebody chalked Chair Kingdom on her driveway. Jimbo added more gnomes, this time lining them up to face her front door like a gnome firing squad. And Chainsaw, he doubled down. He started showing up in her yard with a Bluetooth speaker so big it needed its own extension cord. He grilled burgers on her front lawn and passed them out like he was hosting a block party. Every night, his muffler rattled windows as he backed into park, always in the exact same rut, like he was etching his name into the earth. Darlene stayed silent. She mowed her lawn like nothing was wrong, swept her porch, and nodded politely to the gawkers. But inside, she was plotting. Chainsaw wasn't just disrespecting her yard. He was mocking her. In Polk County, your lawn isn't just grass, it's your reputation. And now hers was a circus act. The gossip reached a fever pitch when somebody made a meme. It was a picture of Chainsaw sitting in her throne, beer belly out, with the caption, "New Mayor of Polk County." Within hours, it was on every local Facebook group, even the church bake sale page. That night, Darlene sat at her kitchen table with a notebook, staring at the meme on her phone. She could almost hear Chainsaw laughing. She thought of her daddy, the way he used to polish that chair like it was a classic car, and she felt something harden in her chest. Enough was enough. She didn't need the law. She didn't need the HOA she wished existed. She needed a professional. And in Polk County, there was only one man for that job.
In tightly knit ecosystems, humiliation spreads rapidly, carried by gossip networks faster than any predator. Here, the dethroned queen reaches a critical stage: adaptation. And to adapt, she must seek assistance from a creature of myth, a cunning apex operator feared by all, and loyal to none.
There's a moment in every Polk County feud where things go from petty drama to call in the experts. For Darlene, that moment came Thursday night when she sat staring at her throne, now permanently dented from Chainsaw's beer belly, and realized she needed someone who played dirtier than Chainsaw ever could. That someone was Three-Wheel Bill. Bill wasn't so much a man as a local legend. Nobody knew where he came from, but everyone knew the sound of his ride. A beat-up three-wheeler that coughed and rattled like it was powered by bad decisions and nicotine. Folks said he hadn't walked farther than 6 steps since 1998.
Others claimed he had a second sense for drama, showing up right when chaos was about to happen, like a storm chaser but for stupidity. Darlene found him outside the bait shop, leaned back on his three-wheeler like a king on a throne that smelled like gas and nostalgia. He wore his signature denim vest covered in fishing lures, each one a souvenir from an alleged fight or fishing trip. A cigarette dangled from his lip like a permanent accessory. Darlene said, "Bill, I got a problem." He didn't even turn his head, just puffed out smoke and said, "Chainsaw." She blinked. "How'd you—" "Girl," Bill interrupted, finally glancing her way with squinty eyes, "I know everything." He flicked ash into an empty Yoo-hoo bottle and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "He's sitting in your throne like a Walmart king, huh?" Darlene nodded, jaw tight. Disrespect like that's contagious. Whole neighborhood thinks they can walk all over you now." She sighed. "So what do I do?" Bill stubbed out a cigarette and stood cracking his knuckles. "You don't do nothing. We do something. This here ain't just about a lawn chair. This is about honor." Darlene raised an eyebrow. "Honor?" He nodded gravely. "Honor, and possibly entertainment. Now come on." Minutes later, she was clinging to the back of his roaring three-wheeler as they tore down a gravel road like fugitives from a low-budget action movie. They skidded to a stop behind his trailer, where his infamous workshop waited, a leaning shed stuffed to the rafters with fishing rods, rusty tools, mystery buckets, and a taxidermied raccoon wearing sunglasses. He kicked the door open, grabbed a plastic crate labeled Projects, and dumped it onto a workbench. Out rode fireworks, fishing line, a bell, duct tape, and a can of spray paint. He cracked a grin. "Sweetheart, we're not just taking back your throne. We're building a legend." Darlene swallowed hard. For the first time all week, she felt hope and maybe a little fear.
And so enters the apex problem solver of Polk County, a creature of myth and mystery, feared by neighbors and adored by Facebook groups. Where law enforcement falters, he thrives, armed with yoo-hoo, duct tape, and a moral code all his own.
Bill's shed smelled like old motor oil, fishing bait, and a dash of danger. He shuffled around, grabbing supplies like a chef prepping a 5-star meal, if the 5 stars stood for chaos. "See," Bill muttered, holding up a mason jar filled with glitter, "revenge is about presentation. Man's gotta feel like the whole county's watching him fall apart." He set the glitter aside, grabbed a bundle of Roman candles, and tossed them onto the workbench. "Fireworks, fishing line, and a goat. That's all you need to ruin a man's summer." Darlene blinked. "A goat?" Bill nodded, already pulling out a bell and a length of rope. "Yup, got one from Earl. Said he's been wanting to get rid of it anyway. Mean little sucker, too. Perfect for this." By nightfall, they were creeping through the park like a SWAT team made of dollar store ninjas. Bill whispered orders like a general. "All right, we're setting phase 1. They slipped through the shadows to Chainsaw's beloved Chevy. The goat bleated softly as Bill hoisted it into the truck bed, tying the rope snug and fastening a bell around its neck. Now when he starts that truck tomorrow, he's going to get a soundtrack of pure regret. Phase 2, Bill tied fishing line from Chainsaw's trailer door to a fireworks rig on the porch. "Open the door, and boom," Bill said, grinning like a pyromaniac Santa Claus.
Darlene followed him to the yard where he was carefully rearranging lawn chairs. He formed a perfect circle, all facing inward toward the throne, which now sat in the center of the lawn like a sacrificial altar. Jimbo's gnomes were borrowed and positioned on the chairs. One was holding a beer can, another had duct-tape sunglasses. "This," Bill whispered reverently, "is art." The pièce de résistance was a giant spray-painted message on Chainsaw's driveway. "Chair Kingdom Falls." Darlene covered her mouth to keep from laughing. "Bill, this is ridiculous." He smirked, flicking his cigarette into the dirt. "Ridiculous is how you make a man question his life choices. Let's wrap it up." They worked in silence, like a covert ops team running on yoo-hoo and adrenaline. Bill made one last adjustment, propping a Bluetooth speaker in a bush. "Got a goat scream sound effect queued up, just in case," he said casually. They slipped away into the night, the park quiet except for the faint jingle of the goat's bell. As they hopped back on the three-wheeler, Darlene looked at Bill. "What if this backfires?" Bill smirked. "Sweetheart, the only thing backfiring is his truck."
Observe as the apex strategist constructs a psychological snare with surgical precision. This is not merely retaliation. It is performance art, a symphony of chaos orchestrated to perfection.
The next morning, Polk County woke up to a spectacle. It started when Chainsaw Clancy stumbled out of his trailer barefoot, scratching his belly and holding a cup of something that probably wasn't coffee. He opened his door, and the park held its breath. Pop! Bang! Whoosh! A Roman candle shot straight into the sky, followed by a shower of sparks. Chainsaw yelped, ducked, and dropped his cup, stumbling backward into a lawn gnome. Another firework shot sideways, bouncing off his porch railing and exploding near his prized recliner. The goat in his truck started bleating like it was possessed, bell jingling wildly. "What the? Hey, what the?" Chainsaw shouted, sprinting toward his truck. The goat, thoroughly traumatized, rammed the side of the bed with enough force to shake the whole vehicle. Chainsaw dove into the cab, fumbling with his keys. The engine coughed to life, muffler screaming like a banshee. The goat's bell jingled louder, and that's when the Bluetooth speaker hidden in the bushes kicked on. A blood-curdling goat scream blared through the park. Chainsaw froze. What the hell? From every trailer window, heads peeked out. Jimbo came outside with his coffee. Miss Patty clutched her pearls. Someone yelled, "What has he done now?" Phones appeared instantly, recording every second. Chainsaw jumped out of his truck, waving his arms at the goat like it was a bomb. That's when he saw it. His driveway spray-painted in giant red letters, "Chair Kingdom Falls." And then he noticed the circle. Every single one of his lawn chairs arranged in a perfect ring, each gnome sitting in 'em like a tiny silent jury. The throne sat in the middle, draped with toilet paper like ceremonial robes. Chainsaw spun in a circle, hands on his head. "What is this?" Bill, watching from a distance with Darlene, puffed on his cigarette like a proud director admiring his masterpiece. Chainsaw's meltdown was instant legend. He screamed at the goat, kicked over a chair, and stomped around his yard while fireworks fizzled around him. Someone started live streaming, and by lunchtime, half the county had seen Chainsaw versus Goat on Facebook. The comments were brutal. "This is performance art. Is that goat demon-possessed? Put that chair back where it came from." By noon, Chainsaw's truck was gone. He packed up his recliner, his speaker, and what was left of his pride, and left the park. Nobody saw him for weeks. That evening,
Darlene sat in her throne again, sweet tea in hand, surveying her reclaimed yard. Bill leaned on his three-wheeler looking smug. "Think you'll come back?" she asked. Bill blew out smoke. "Not 'less he wants a sequel."
And so concludes the saga of the lawn chair ambush, a tale of dominance challenged, vengeance perfected, and a goat whose role in this drama will echo in local legend. In this corner of small-town America, justice isn't served in courtrooms. It's plotted in sheds, fueled by yoo-hoo, and executed with fireworks. Our final case tonight centers on Patty Simmons, a woman armed with laminated rules, color-coded tabs, and a belief that order is the only thing keeping her neighborhood from collapse. But when a new neighbor arrives with a trunk full of livestock and a disregard for every ordinance she holds sacred, Patty finds herself in the middle of a poultry-fueled uprising. This is the chicken permit incident.
The trailer park woke up like it always did, in stages and with opinions. A coffee maker gurgled 3 doors down. Somebody's box fan hummed in a window like an airplane that gave up on flying. A leaf blower fired at 6:59 a.m. because its owner believed in both noise and punctuality. No one called the office. Here, we relied on a different force. Her name was Patty Simmons. Patty wasn't known for a magazine-perfect yard. Her grass grew in patches, and a stubborn bald spot near the porch looked like Texas. But her mailbox stood at the regulation 42 inches. Her trash cans faced the road at a 90-degree angle on collection day, and her recycling bins wore neat, laminated labels: glass, plastic, paper, zip-tied on like little uniforms. If the park had a heartbeat, Patty kept it on a clipboard. She was a retired nurse with a calm voice and a lethal relationship with a label maker. On her coffee table sat the laminated park ordinance handbook, 3-hole punched and tabbed with color-coded flags: parking, pets, seasonal decor, quiet hours. She'd made her own addendum for the rules the management forgot. Inflatable pools, depth 24 inches max. Christmas lights, removal by Jan 15. Fire pits must be above ground and not inside a shopping cart. Patty called the office so often the voicemail greeted her by name. Every morning, she performed the patrol. Mug of tea in one hand, spiral notebook in the other, she strolled her block, noting infractions with nurse-level precision. Lot 12, trash can left out past Monday. Lot 8, porch swing anchored with an orange extension cord, fire risk. Lot 3, wind chimes exceeding reasonable chime. She didn't scold, she documented. There's a difference. The park, for its part, did not share her passion. Teenagers drag-raced bicycles at dusk. A karaoke machine wandered the neighborhood like a stray dog. Someone's porch displayed a Christmas moose in July wearing a 4th of July hat. Patty did not hate these people. She loved order more than she loved being loved. On this particular morning, her patrol paused at Lot 17, the newest vacancy. A rust-red oil stain bloomed in the driveway like modern art, fresh. The lot hummed with new neighbor possibilities: a stack of mismatched pallets, a disassembled trampoline frame, and a blue tarp staked to the ground. Patty opened her welcome folder, photocopy of the handbook, a map with noted speed bumps, and a page she'd highlighted twice. Section 7C, prohibited livestock. She smiled, the tight kind. Better to start folks off right, she murmured, sliding a sticky note on top of the page. Welcome, please review.
Across the park, a muffler barked. Somewhere, a Bluetooth speaker attempted country rap. A small child sprinted past holding 3 popsicles, 2 of which were not his. Patty breathed in, steadying herself with a sip of tea. She had chosen to live in the slipstream between chaos and compliance. Somebody had to do it. Her phone buzzed, the park office, or maybe another neighbor who just had a question about porch refrigerators. She tucked the notebook under her arm and headed home, satisfied. The handbook sat on her coffee table like a shield. The day felt manageable, containable, almost peaceful. She did not yet know that Lot 17 would soon test every tab, every laminate, every ounce of her belief that rules could hold back a tide.
In habitats where rules are written but enforcement is aspirational, certain individuals evolve into self-appointed regulators. Observe the ritual, the morning patrol, the annotated handbook, the offering of a welcome packet. Balance, for now, is maintained, but soon a free-range variable will enter the system, and equilibrium will be enthusiastically disrupted.
The peace Patty had cultivated with laminated tabs and neatly labeled recycling bins didn't last long. On a Wednesday afternoon, a rust-red Suburban wheezed into Lot 17. The engine backfired like it was dodging tax collectors. Oil dripped from somewhere unidentifiable, immediately staining the driveway Patty had so carefully noted as vacant and well-maintained. The driver emerged like a storm cloud with a ball cap. Joe Miller, though neighbors would soon know him only as Rooster Joe. He hauled out a rusty dog crate from the back seat. Inside, 3 bedraggled hens squawked like angry passengers demanding a refund. Joe plopped the crate on the porch of Lot 17 and muttered, "Welcome home, ladies." Patty froze mid-patrol, notebook in hand. She blinked twice, certain she'd hallucinated. Section 7C, prohibited livestock, the very word she'd highlighted in neon pink. Joe, unfazed by the weight of decades-old ordinances, strolled back to his Suburban, retrieving a roll of chicken wire, a trampoline frame, and a bag of feed labeled "Scratch and Peck" for birds with attitude. He whistled off-key as he zip-tied the trampoline frame into a crude coop. Patty's fingers tightened around her notebook. She approached, calm but firm. "Excuse me, sir, are those chickens?" Joe turned, chewing a toothpick like he was starring in a western. "Sure are," he said cheerfully. "Ain't they pretty?" "They're not allowed in the park," Patty said, flipping to her laminated section on livestock. Joe shrugged. "Ain't no law says a man can't feed himself." "That's not the point. Look, ma'am," he said, spreading his arms, "these ladies are family, and family don't get evicted." The hens clucked like they agreed. By sundown, Joe had not only finished building his coop, but also set out 2 lawn chairs, a cooler, and a Bluetooth speaker blaring country ballads. The hens roamed freely, pecking at weeds, porch steps, and Patty's patience. The next morning, Patty documented the first offense, droppings on sidewalk, 6:12 a.m. By noon, she had a full page. The hens had wandered into her driveway, pecked at her azaleas, and startled her neighbor's toddler, who ran home screaming, "The birds are chasing me!" Nobody else seemed alarmed. Kids gathered to toss corn chips. Jimbo declared he'd never had fresher eggs in his life. The office didn't answer Patty's calls. On day 3, she returned from a trip to the quick stop to find 3 more hens added to the flock. Joe waved from his porch. "They multiply fast," he said proudly. Patty clutched her ordinance binder.
"This is anarchy," she muttered. Joe popped open a beer and leaned back. "Welcome to freedom, ma'am."
Observe the arrival of a free-range disruptor, a man unconcerned with local law, unbound by social contracts and fully committed to his feathered companions. In this ecosystem, enforcement is theoretical, and chaos travels in flocks.
By week 2, Patty had accepted that the chickens weren't leaving. She had not, however, accepted defeat. She doubled her efforts, carrying her clipboard like a sheriff's badge. Each day's patrol grew more thorough. On Monday, she logged noise disturbance, 4:07 a.m. On Tuesday, hen trespassing, lot 12's kiddie pool. By Wednesday, she had an entire binder labeled chicken crimes. And then came the rooster. Joe arrived home one evening with a cardboard box clucking ominously. From it emerged a magnificent rooster with glossy feathers and a comb as red as a crime scene. Joe named him Freedom. That first night, Freedom perched proudly on the coop railing under the glow of a street light. At precisely 2:58 a.m., he let out a crow so loud it echoed off every aluminum trailer panel in the park. Patty sat up in bed like she'd been shot. At 3:12 a.m., Freedom crowed again. At 3:19, again. By sunrise, half the park was awake, and Joe was snoring peacefully through it all. "Some roosters crow at dawn," Patty muttered, scribbling in her log. "This one crows like it's defending its dissertation." She recorded every crow with a handheld audio recorder. Her evidence folder now included timestamps, photos of chicken droppings, and even a diagram of the flock's foraging routes through the park. But Joe wasn't backing down. The next morning, Patty awoke to a spray-painted sign above his coop. "Chickens' lives matter." She gasped so hard she nearly dropped her mug of tea. The sign was crooked, written in orange paint, and completely unreadable to anyone beyond 20 feet, but it radiated defiance. Joe stood proudly in front of it, arms crossed. He declared free speech. Patty's hand shook as she updated her binder. Graffiti, lot 17. The rooster crowed again, like punctuation. By now, the chickens had become park celebrities. Neighbors dropped by with snacks. Kids named them Nugget, Drumstick, and Mrs. Peepers. One hen wore a doll sweater courtesy of a neighbor's kid. Another trailer rigged a baby monitor to broadcast the coop live on Facebook. Patty was losing control of her neighborhood, one feather at a time. She wrote letters to management, stapled printouts of ordinances to Joe's porch, and left anonymous notes signed "Concerned Resident." Joe started framing them on his fridge. Her last straw came when she stepped out one morning to find Freedom, the rooster, standing on her porch railing, crowing directly into her living room window. She stared him down, binder in hand, while he screamed like a car alarm. "This means war," she whispered.
Observe the escalation, a territorial dispute evolving into open defiance. The female, armed with documentation and righteous indignation, faces a foe unbothered by rules, sleep schedules, or spray paint etiquette. In this conflict, victory will not be determined by law, but by creativity.
By the end of the month, the trailer park had transformed into a barnyard circus. Facebook was flooded with memes. Someone posted a photo of Joe holding a chicken like a newborn with the caption, "Farm to Porch Delivery Service." Another meme showed Patty clutching her binder labeled "Karen of the Coop."
That one racked up over 200 laughing reactions in a single afternoon. Joe leaned into the fame. He set up a folding table next to his Suburban with a cardboard sign, "Fresh eggs, $3 a dozen." Within hours, half the park lined up, waving cash. Miss Patty from church posted a status calling Joe a God-fearing entrepreneur, bringing wholesome food to the community. She conveniently ignored the rooster crowing like a malfunctioning alarm clock in the background of her live stream. Meanwhile, kids treated the chickens like a neighborhood petting zoo. Someone fed one a Dorito, which quickly became a trend. By the end of the week, Patty counted at least 3 hens addicted to Cool Ranch. One even followed a kid home and spent the night perched on their gaming chair. Patty filed reports. She called the office. She even mailed a certified letter to park management titled "An Urgent Matter of Foul Play." Nobody responded. Her binder grew thicker. She started carrying it in a tote bag like a lawyer. Inside were printed screenshots, a log of 47 noise complaints, and a chart showing rooster crow times highlighted in red. On Tuesday, Patty awoke to find a line of chickens sitting on her porch rail like sentries. They clucked in unison, as if mocking her. A teenager across the street filmed her shooing them away with a broom and posted it to TikTok with the caption, "Trailer Park Chicken Police." The video hit 10,000 views before noon. Humiliation was now part of Patty's daily routine. Neighbors waved at her with egg cartons in hand. Joe had become a folk hero, nicknamed Rooster Joe. And someone even made T-shirts. One read, "Cluck the System." Patty's friends from church whispered sympathetic comments like, "Bless your heart, you're just so passionate." The tone was pitying, and pity in this park was deadlier than gossip. For Patty, every crow from freedom felt like a personal insult. Every egg sale felt like a slap in the face, and the Facebook memes, they were proof that nobody respected order anymore. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, binder open, staring at a map of the park she'd drawn by hand. She'd marked each rooster crow like a sniper mapping enemy positions. She needed backup. And in Polk County, there was only one man for the job.
In rural ecosystems, chaos spreads quickly, aided by humor, gossip, and social media. The balance of power shifts as the rebellious neighbor gains folk hero status, while the enforcer becomes a symbol of overregulation. Now, a new predator must enter the scene.
Patty was at her breaking point when the sound of a 2-stroke engine echoed through the park like a war cry. 3-wheel Bill rolled up in the cloud of blue exhaust, his infamous 3-wheeler bouncing over potholes like it was dodging sniper fire. Kids stopped mid-game to wave, dogs barked, Joe's rooster crowed, as if sensing a rival apex predator. Bill parked diagonally in Patty's driveway, dismounted with a grunt, and unwrapped a moon pie like he had all the time in the world. "Heard there's a poultry coup," he said casually, leaning against his 3-wheeler. Patty crossed her arms. "It's not a coup. It's a violation of Section 7C. Bill raised an eyebrow. "You got the handbook on you?" Patty held up her laminated binder like a holy relic. Bill smirked. "Figures." He strolled toward Lot 17, unbothered by the chickens pecking at his boots. Freedom the rooster strutted along the fence line, puffing his chest like a bodyguard. Bill squatted down to inspect Joe's makeshift coop, chewing thoughtfully on his moon pie. Zip ties for hinges, trampoline frame for structure, plywood roof. He nodded.
Craftsmanship's terrible, but functionally impressive. Joe, lounging in a lawn chair with a can of beer, tipped his hat. "Morning, Bill." Bill grunted. "Morning. You know your rooster sounds like a smoke alarm with asthma, right?" Joe laughed. "That's Freedom. He's a free spirit." Bill squinted. "Freedom, huh? Yeah, I've met folks named Freedom before. Usually end up on cops." Petty hissed through her teeth. "Bill, this isn't funny. He's breaking the rules." Bill turned, deadpan. "Petty, you live in a trailer park where Earl keeps a lawnmower in his living room. Ain't nobody following the rules here." Petty blinked, momentarily speechless. "But," Bill said, standing up and dusting off his hands, "you ain't wrong. Man's out of control. Rooster's got the whole neighborhood crowing." Joe leaned back in his chair, smirking. "It's called country living." Bill's eyes narrowed. "It's called psychological warfare." Joe frowned. "What?" Bill ignored him and strode back toward Patty's trailer, motioning for her to follow. Once they were out of earshot, he spoke low. "I'll take care of this." Patty clasped her hands. "Really? You mean it?" Bill lit a cigarette. "Sweetheart, I've been solving neighbor problems since the Reagan administration. You want him humbled or humiliated?" Patty blinked. "Both." Bill cracked a grin. "That's what I like to hear." He scribbled a shopping list on a napkin. Motion sensor, sprinklers, bucket of feed, Bluetooth speaker, moon pie refill. "Go get me these," he said, handing her the list. "Tonight we're sending a message."
Enter the apex strategist once more, calm, calculated, and unimpressed by chaos. He doesn't call the authorities. He is the authority. And soon feathers will fly.
Night fell over the park like a slow wink. Porch lights flickered on one by one, kids disappeared indoors, and the usual soundtrack of barking dogs and distant country music gave way to a calm hum. But in Patty's yard, the calm was a cover. Bill crouched near a garden hose, cigarette glowing like a firefly. "All right, sprinklers are armed," he whispered, adjusting a motion sensor with duct tape. Patty clutched her binder, eyes darting around nervously. "Are you sure this is legal?" Bill gave her a flat look. "Patty, you're in a trailer park where Earl once tried to register a pet raccoon as a service animal. Nothing here is legal." Patty swallowed hard. "Fair point." Phase 2 was a Bluetooth speaker hidden in a bush, cued with a sound file Bill had spent 2 hours perfecting. A hawk screech mixed with unsettling growls he downloaded from predatorsoundlibrary.com. He tested it once and even Patty jumped. Phase 3, bait. Bill scattered a line of feed from Joe's porch to the center of his truck, forming a perfect circle around his truck. "Bait 'em like catfish," Bill muttered. Patty watched him work with wide eyes. "You do this often?" Bill smirked. "I got a subscription card at Tractor Supply with platinum status. What do you think?" At dawn, the trap was set. Joe emerged from his trailer in plaid pajama pants, scratching his belly and carrying a scoop of feed. He yawned, oblivious to the audience of neighbors peeking through blinds. Freedom, perched proudly on the coop, crowed loud enough to rattle windows. Joe chuckled and tossed feed, stepping into the yard. Click. The motion sensor tripped. Sprinklers roared to life like blasting Joe like a fire truck hose. "What the? Hey!" Joe sputtered, spinning in circles as chickens squawked and scattered in all directions. That's when the hawk scream echoed through the park. The chickens panicked.
Feathers filled the air. One hen launched herself onto Joe's shoulder, flapping like a helicopter trying to escape a war zone. Joe flailed, slipping on the soaked grass and landing flat on his back. Neighbors poured out onto porches, phones in hand. Jimbo nearly spit out his coffee laughing. Bill, leaning casually against his three-wheeler, pressed a button on his phone. The hawk scream looped again, joined by a recording of a wolf howl. The chickens bolted for cover like they'd just seen the end of days. "Bill!" Joe shouted, drenched and covered in mud as Freedom perched triumphantly on his chest. Bill exhaled smoke like a movie villain. "Morning, Joe." Within minutes, the footage hit Facebook. Rooster Joe versus Predator. The video showed Joe flailing, hens screaming, sprinklers firing like a SWAT raid. By noon, it had 3,000 views and a comment section full of laughing emojis. By noon, Rooster Joe versus Predator had more views than the mayor's 4th of July fireworks live stream. Comments poured in. "Give that hawk a medal. This is better than Netflix." Patty was right. Joe stayed in his trailer the rest of the day, blinds drawn, while neighbors whispered and laughed outside. By evening, the chickens were strangely quiet, and so was Freedom. The next morning, a different sound echoed through the park. The sputter of Joe's Suburban leaving Lot 17, a cage of disgruntled birds in the back. The rooster glared through the bars like he was plotting revenge. Joe didn't say goodbye. Patty stepped out onto her porch with a mug of tea, binder in hand. For the first time in weeks, the park was calm. No crowing, no squawking, no chicken droppings on her porch railing. Miss Patty from church waved as she passed by, smiling sweetly. "We sure are proud of you," she said, voice dripping with that southern mix of respect and gossip. "You really stood your ground." Patty straightened her shoulders. "I simply upheld park ordinance," she said primly, though she was smiling behind her mug. Jimbo wandered over grinning. "Patty, you're a hero. That video's got, 5,000 views now? My cousin in Kentucky texted me about it." Patty blushed. She'd never been called a hero before, not even back in her nursing days. It was nice. Later that afternoon, Bill rolled up on his three-wheeler, cigarette dangling from his lips. He parked diagonally, as usual, and gave Patty a slow nod. "Job's done," he said, handing her a single egg in a paper towel. Patty blinked. "What's this?" he said. "Parting gift from the ladies. Consider it a peace treaty." Patty held the egg like it was a trophy. "Thank you, Bill. Really." He shrugged. "Ain't no thing. Just doing my civic duty." She smiled. "You should run for office." He smirked, flicking his cigarette. "Darling, I already am the government." That evening, Patty sat at her kitchen table, binder closed for the first time in weeks. Outside, the sunset painted the trailers gold, and for once, the park was quiet enough for her to hear cicadas. She took a deep breath, relishing the silence. On Facebook, the video had hit 10,000 views. Someone had edited dramatic music over it, turning Joe's soaked flailing escape into a cinematic masterpiece. Another user had made a meme, Bill in black and white, cigarette glowing, with the caption, "Law and Order, Poultry Unit." Patty chuckled softly. Order had been restored. At least, for now.
And so concludes the chicken permit incident. A tale of order restored through ingenuity, persistence, and the kind of justice only a man on a three-wheeler can deliver. In these communities, livestock may come and go, but legends remain, whispered at church suppers, retold at bait shops, and immortalized online forever. And so ends another day in the untamed ecosystems of small-town America, where grudges outlive appliances, and neighborhood drama spreads faster than Wi-Fi nobody pays for. If you enjoyed observing this rare display of rural chaos, click like to signal your approval, and subscribe to join us for future field studies. We'll be back soon with more tales of questionable decisions, suspicious lawn ornaments, and legendary disputes that could only happen here. Thank you for watching. And remember, somewhere out there, a three-wheeler is idling, waiting for its next mission.